An invitation arrives, soaked in danger. Welcome to Wolfe's Casebook. I am your host, Enigma. Share where you're watching from. I love reading every comment. Let's uncover the truth. If you've been in Wolfe's office long enough, you learn the sound of trouble before it walks in. It isn't footsteps on the stoop or the doorbell. It's the way Fritz starts moving like a man whose neat kitchen universe is about to be violated by the outside world. Trouble makes Fritz a little faster, a little quieter, and twice as polite, like a butler in a house where the walls could suddenly decide to argue. That afternoon I was in the office with my feet on the desk and my conscience in my pocket, correcting a letter to a man who deserved a corrected letter about as much as a goldfish deserves a sweater. Wolfe was opposite me, filling his chair the way a cathedral fills a city block, a book open on his lap and his eyes making a private sport of ignoring it. He'd been in one of his stubborn moods all day. The orchids had gone well. The lunch had been tolerable. The world, as arranged by Nero Wolfe, had no pressing need for me except to walk somewhere and look at something for him later. And I was enjoying the lull. Fritz crossed the hall like a diplomat in enemy territory and stopped at the office doorway. "Mr. Goodwin." His voice was smooth, but his mouth had that invisible pinch it gets when a stranger is on the other side of the front door. "A lady is here. She asks for Mr. Wolfe." Wolfe didn't look up. He handled intrusions the way other men handle mosquitoes, by assuming they weren't there and waiting for the social universe to correct itself. "A lady," I said, with what I hoped was a casual drawl. "We have ladies on Tuesdays. Today isn't Tuesday." Fritz gave me a glance that said I was being funny on company time. "She says it is urgent. She has a card. It is unusual." That got Wolfe to move his eyes an eighth of an inch off the page. "Unusual cards are usually for weddings or funerals," he said. "We are not soliciting either." "Archie." Which in Wolfe language means, "Go find out what the disturbance is so I don't have to move my lips more than absolutely necessary." I sighed, got up, and went to the front room. She was standing by the big chair in the red leather that no one sits in unless Wolfe tells them to, or unless they want to be carried out. She wasn't tall, but she was put together like a decision, trim, straight-backed, and with the kind of face that had practiced looking calm in rooms where people said no for a living. I would have pegged her around 35 if I were being kind, 40 if I were being accurate, and successful either way. The coat she wore was the sort that doesn't go on sale. She had grey gloves in one hand and a small envelope in the other. Her eyes did the instant inventory on me that women do when they're measuring how much of their day you're about to steal. She didn't blink. "Good afternoon," I said. "Archie Goodwin. If you want to see Mr. Wolfe, I'll need your name and your reason spelled in crayon." She gave me the envelope. I was told he would understand the reason if he saw that. I took it. The envelope was heavy stock. No return address. My name not on it. Wolfe's not on it. Just a small black symbol embossed in the corner. A square within a square, like a window shutting itself twice. The paper had a faint scent. Something dry and old, like cedar in a library. "I'm flattered," I said, "but you're asking me to do the opening honors." That could be dangerous. "I don't believe it is meant for me," she said. "It is meant for him." She was too controlled for a person who had willingly stepped into Wolfe's brownstone without an appointment. Either she'd been here before or she'd trained for it. All right. I slit it with my thumbnail and slid out a card. It was a single rectangle of thick paper, the size of an invitation, and the color of a wound. Not pink, not red in the polite sense, but a deep blood tone that looked like it had been mixed in a lab. On the front, in black ink, was a line of calligraphy. "Mr. Nero Wolfe is cordially invited to attend a private dinner on Thursday at 8 at the residence of Mr. Alden Grove. An urgent matter of honor will be discussed. Your presence is requested without delay." Under that, centered, was the same double square symbol. No signature, no address besides the name, no RSVP. The whole thing had the discreet arrogance of people who don't ask, because they are accustomed to being obeyed. I felt my eyebrows go up, partly from surprise and partly because the paper really was that color. Wolfe has a few buttons you can press without losing fingers: orchids, food, the sanctity of his schedule, and his personal dignity. This card had 3 of the 4 packed into one neat rectangle. "That's your unusual?" I asked Fritz over my shoulder. Fritz nodded gravely. "You don't mess with the maitre d' by showing him something that looks like a dinner invitation for a man who values dinner as a sacrament." The woman watched me read. No fidgeting, no telegraphing. She had done her share of waiting in offices and, I decided, probably her share of owning them. "Mr. Wolfe is occupied," I said, "but he can be disturbed for a just cause. Are you bringing the cause, or is it hiding in that card?" "My name is Celia Vane," she said. "The cause is in that card, but it won't explain itself unless he opens it. He doesn't open cards. I do. It's part of my charming servitude." I gestured. "Please come in. Or rather, please come in again. We'll go to his office." She moved without hesitation. That's always a clue. People who are here under protest do a little dance at the doorway. People who already decided their next step 2 days ago don't. Back in the office, Wolfe had shut his book and was looking at me in that heavy-lidded way that says he expects incompetence but is willing to be corrected by evidence. "Miss Vane," I said. "Mr. Wolfe." She inclined her head. Wolfe didn't rise. He doesn't rise even if J. Edgar Hoover walks in. She took a seat when I offered it, in the red leather chair, which meant either she was confident or reckless. With Wolfe, those two are kissing cousins. Wolfe held out a hand. Not for her hand, for the card. I passed it. He studied the color first. I could see the slight narrowing of his eyes. He doesn't like surprises, particularly chromatic ones. Then he read it, slowly, and when he got to the double square symbol, he held the card closer as if it might suddenly talk. He read it again. His face didn't change, but the air in the room did. You can tell when Wolfe is interested because it makes silence heavier. He looked up at her. "You brought this, madam, but you did not write it." "No." "You know who did?" "Yes." "Yet you came here rather than to Mr. Grove." "Yes." He regarded her. "Why?" She took a breath that might have been rehearsed in front of a mirror. "Because I'm afraid to go there alone." That's a decent line, but decent lines are cheap in New York. The price is in what you say next. I was asked to deliver the invitation. She kept her eyes on Wolfe, not on me, which was smart. "I was told you would attend. If you do not, I will be blamed." "By whom?" "By the man who wrote it." "And who is that?" "Mr. Alden Grove." Wolfe's eyebrows rose slightly. "So he invites himself to his own dinner. That is not merely discourteous, it is incompetent." She didn't smile. "The invitation is a means, not a formality." Wolfe looked at the card again. "An urgent matter of honor will be discussed." Honor. The word is used by men who either possess it or are faking it. Mr. Grove is which? "I don't know." She hesitated, and that was human enough to be useful. "He's very rich. He is very certain. He has people around him who are careful." "So you are a messenger?" "Yes." "Why you?" She glanced down at her gloves. "Because I work for him." That was the first crack. Not a big one, but it let light in. "As what?" I asked. "Executive assistant. I manage listings, correspondence, schedules. I supervise the household staff when he is in town." Wolfe's eyes went to the double square symbol. "How long have you been in his employ?" 3 years. "And you're afraid?" "Yes." He let the card rest on his belly. "Afraid of what?" She took another breath. "Of being used, of being blamed, of being drawn into whatever this dinner is really about." Wolfe made a small sound, not quite a snort. more like a man clearing a thought out of his throat. "Madame, you already are drawn in. You brought the line to the hook. You are the bait." "I know." Her voice tightened for the first time. Silence. Wolfe's silence is not empty. It's a tool. Set it on the table long enough and someone will pick it up and cut themselves. Finally, she added, "Mr. Grove has been gathering people, quietly. There is tension in the house. I can feel it. He has asked 4 people to the dinner. All of them have reason to dislike each other, or to fear each other. I don't know which." "Who are they?" Wolfe asked. She named them without looking at me. "Professor Lionel Kerner, Mrs. Tabitha Lorne, Mr. Raphael Boone, and a man I haven't met who is arriving from Chicago tomorrow, Mr. Damon Hurst." Wolfe's expression didn't change, but I saw the smallest movement of his fingers on the card, like a pianist tasting a chord. "Those are not household guests," I said. "No." She met my eyes now, quick and direct. "They are part of Mr. Grove's life outside the house. Business, philanthropy, the arts. I can't say more. I don't have access to everything, but I know enough to think this is not a dinner for pleasure." "Then it is a dinner for war," Wolfe said. He sounded almost pleased. "Exactly." She leaned forward, and there was the second crack. "Mr. Wolfe, I'm not bringing you gossip. I'm bringing you a warning. Mr. Grove wants something from you, but he does not want to ask for it openly. And yet he makes a theatrical invitation in red." She swallowed. "He wants to force you into his space, into his rhythm. If you refuse, he can say you refused an honorable request. If you accept, he can say you accepted knowledge you didn't earn. Either way, he controls the story." Wolfe regarded her as if she were a specimen he had asked for and not expected to actually arrive alive. "You are intelligent," he said. "Why have you not resigned your position?" She stared at him. "Because I don't know what resignation would cost me." Wolfe nodded once, slow. "That is a rational fear." I shifted my weight like a man who didn't want to be a third wheel between a client and a genius. The question in my head was simple. Why would a rich man invite Wolfe to dinner with 4 other people and call it a matter of honor? There are a lot of games played in New York, but most of them happen in daylight. The kind that need Wolfe's presence happen when someone has already lost. "Miss Vane," Wolfe said, "how were you instructed to deliver this?" "I was told to bring it to you personally, to wait for your response, to report it." "Meaning you are to return to him with a yes or no?" "Yes," Wolfe considered. "Then you will return with a conditional yes. You will tell him that I will attend only after my assistant has met with him and obtained clarification of the circumstances." Her lips parted. "He said you would not attempt conditions." "Mr. Grove is not a prophet." Wolfe's eyes slid to me. "Archie will go this evening." She looked at me, and this time there was a flicker of relief that she tried to hide. "He may refuse to see you." "He may," Wolfe said. "If he does, he will be obliged to see the police, and he knows it. You will say to him that I am prepared to interpret his invitation as an implied request for professional service. If the request is not explicit by 7 o'clock tonight, I will not attend. If he wishes to preserve his honor, his chosen word, he will comply." Her jaw tightened. I could see the calculation running behind her eyes. She was thinking about what sort of man Wolfe had to be to call a bluff like that, while sitting in a chair that probably had never seen the inside of a fight in its life. "All right," she said quietly. "I will tell him that." Wolfe lifted a hand. "One more inquiry. The symbol on this card. What does it mean?" She went still. "That's always a good sign you ask the right question." "It is his personal mark," she said. "A family emblem. He uses it in private correspondence. It means, I don't know what it means formally, but he told me once it signifies the house within the house. His phrase. Something about loyalty and boundaries." Wolfe's eyes grew a shade colder. loyalty and boundaries, in a card that invades my boundaries. She rose, smoothing her coat. The control was back, but her shoulders were a fraction lower. Mr. Wolfe, I don't want trouble. I wanted to do this properly. Properly is a relative term, Wolfe said. However, you have done something prudent. Return to your employer. Say what I instructed. Then wait. If there is trouble, you will call Mr. Goodwin. His number is in the book. If you cannot reach him, you will call Saul Panzer at this number. Wolfe nodded at me. I wrote it down on a slip and handed it to her. Do not be heroic. It is frequently fatal. Yes, sir. Not a flinch. She meant that. She left. Fritz showed her out. When the door had settled and the house breathed normally again, I looked at Wolfe. All right, start the orchestra. Who is Alden Grove, and why is he trying to buy your chair a ticket to a dinner party? Wolfe folded the blood-red card once, carefully, as if it offended him on tactile grounds. Alden Grove, he said, is a man who would like to be considered inevitable. He is in the habit of surrounding himself with people whom he can afford to dismiss. He has not previously attempted to surround me. So this is a first date. Wolfe ignored that. In 1959, he was involved in a case in which I declined to assist him. He has remembered it longer than I have. The invitation is not merely unusual. It is pointed. He put the card on the desk, face up, so the red glowed like a quiet threat. Okay, I said. We are either about to have our evening ruined or our week ruined. Which? Wolfe stared at the card as if he could see the shape of the dinner through it. Neither. We are about to have our curiosity stimulated. Go to Mr. Grove, listen, observe. Do not commit yourself. Return with facts. And if I don't come back, then you will have committed yourself. That was Wolfe's version of a lullaby. I lit a cigarette. Yes, in Wolfe's office, because he tolerates me as he tolerates storms and taxes, and exhaled toward the ceiling. 4 guests, a blood-red card, a matter of honor, and a house within a house. Sounds like a parlor game for people who don't play with the lights on. Wolfe opened his book again, reclaiming his afternoon like a king reclaiming a province. Archie, he said without looking up, do not be melodramatic. It is tiresome. Sure, I said, heading for the door. I'll just go visit the inevitable man with the loyalty and boundaries symbol who's cooking up an honorable war dinner. I'll be as unmelodramatic as a surgeon. Behind me, Wolfe's voice followed like a final chess move. And Archie, be punctual. Fritz is preparing roast duck. I will not have it punished for Mr. Grove's vanity. That's how the brownstone deals with invitations. Some men worry about the color. Wolfe worries about dinner. I went upstairs to get my hat, already feeling the faint itch of a case settling onto my shoulders. Those names she dropped were not random. They had the ring of people who appear in society pages beside words like endowment, board, and controversy. And if a man like Alden Grove wanted Wolfe in his house, it wasn't for a compliment. It was because something in that inner house was bleeding, and he'd decided the best way to keep it quiet was to invite the doctor under a red flag. I took the stairs 2 at a time, not because I was in a hurry. Wolfe doesn't pay me by the sweat bead, but because a blood-red invitation tends to make you itch for air. In my room, I swapped my house jacket for a suit that didn't look like it slept in the desk drawer, and the mirror told me I was presentable enough to be admitted to any lair of the inevitable. On the way down, I passed the orchid rooms. The door was shut, the light on. Even when the world was pushing at the brownstone's ribs, Wolfe's green empire stayed inviolate. It was a comfort, like knowing the sun still comes up even if you're walking into a basement. The cab got me to East 68th, through a late afternoon rain that had decided to be spiteful. The neighborhood was cut from that old New York cloth, where the sidewalks look scrubbed and the buildings wear money the way some women wear mink. Too casually to impress you, too expensively to ignore. Grove's place was a townhouse set back a polite distance from the street, with a black iron gate and a man in a coat who had the shape of discretion. I rang. The door opened in less than 10 seconds, which meant they were expecting me, or expecting someone. The butler, if that's what he was grey at the temples and stiff through, the shoulders in the way of men who have learned to remain upright when the people around them collapse. "Mr. Goodwin?" he asked. "That's the rumor. I'm Mr. Heller. Please come in." The hall smelled of waxed wood and old roses, not fresh. It was the perfume of a house that was kept ready for ceremony rather than living. He took my coat and hat with the efficiency of someone who never needs a second motion. I followed him through a high-ceilinged front room where a bronze horse could have jogged through without bumping a chair, past a library with its lights low and its furniture arranged like it was waiting for an audience, up a narrow flight to a smaller drawing room that looked out on a courtyard with bare trees and a stone fountain that was turned off as if water would have been indecent. "Mr. Grove is in his study. He will see you at once." That last was a little too smooth. I'd figured on some delay, maybe a test of my patience timed to impress Wolfe. Instead, I was being rolled straight to the altar. I filed it under interesting. The study door was ajar. Heller tapped and ushered me in. Alden Grove was standing behind a desk that cost what my first car cost and probably had more credibility. He was in his late 50s, tall, broad in the shoulders, but not soft in the middle, with silver hair combed back like he was trying to keep time from falling in his face. His suit was charcoal and perfect, his tie a shade of dark green that made me think of money that liked to masquerade as taste. The face was the clincher. Not handsome in the calendar sense, but fitted for authority. Straight nose, narrow mouth, eyes that didn't soften when they should have. He looked like a man who makes phone calls and expects the city to tremble politely. "Mr. Goodwin." He came around the desk and offered his hand. "I appreciate your promptness." Wolfe appreciates duck. I take care of the promptness. I shook his hand, dry, firm, no warmth, like a contract. "Sit down." I did. The chair was leather, deep and expensive. A person could fall into it and forget why he'd come. Grove went back behind the desk but didn't sit. Another interesting choice. If you've got a control problem, standing over a seated visitor helps. If you've got an honesty problem, it also helps, until the visitor keeps looking at your knees and wonders what you're hiding. "You saw my invitation," he said. I delivered Wolfe's reply. Conditional, yes. A faint tightening at the corners of his mouth. Not irritation, exactly. More like surprise that the universe had not complied with his first draft. I anticipated Mr. Wolfe would refuse to leave his house. He doesn't refuse to leave it. He refuses to be maneuvered. Grove held my eyes. "And you think that is what I'm doing?" "I think you sent a card the color of a confession and asked him to come on your terms. If that's not maneuvering, I've been spelling it wrong." He let the silence stretch, then nodded once as if confirming a suspicion of his own. "Very well. Let us be explicit. I require Mr. Wolfe's professional services." "That's the first sensible thing you've said. Now the second one should be why." His gaze flicked toward the window and back. For a moment he looked older, not from years, but from the weight of something he didn't enjoy carrying. "Because," he said, "something has been taken from me. And if I do not recover it quietly, I will be destroyed by people who claim to care about honor." I leaned forward slightly. "What was taken?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened a drawer and withdrew a small object wrapped in tissue. He unwrapped it carefully and set it on the desk between us. It was an invitation card. Another one, blood red, the same heavy stock, the same double square emblem. Except this one had been torn cleanly in half. Not frayed, not crumpled. Bisected by a straight, deliberate cut. Grove touched it with one finger as if it could bite. "This was on my desk at noon yesterday. It wasn't there an hour earlier. I did not authorize it, and half of it is missing." I looked at the remaining half. The black script was elegant, but incomplete now. You could see the top curve of a name, the tail of a sentence, and the signature line gone ragged where the cut had passed through it. The emblem was intact. "What did the whole card say?" I asked. "That," he said softly, "is the question that may ruin me if the wrong person answers first." He had a talent for laying bait on the table and then pretending he hadn't noticed the hook. I picked up the half card, turned it over. Blank on the back. Like the first one, the cut edge was so clean I could have shaved with it. Whoever had done it had either a good knife or a good reason to show off. "You're giving me poetry," I said. "Try prose." "What was on it before it got turned into modern art?" His eyes didn't move. "I don't know." That was either the truth or a pretty expensive lie. I filed it alongside his standing posture. "You found this on your desk. You didn't write it. You didn't authorize it. So who was in a position to put it there?" "Anyone with access to this floor." His tone was clipped, impatient with the obvious. "House staff, security, Miss Vane, possibly a guest." "You said yesterday at noon." "Who besides the staff was in the house then?" He hesitated a fraction. "No guests." "Meaning none you invited?" I said. "Meaning none at all." He didn't like the direction that was taking. "All right. What made you think half the card is missing because someone stole it, not because it arrived that way?" "Because I tore no card," he said, and there was a sudden flare of not quite anger. "Because it is my stationery. Because the missing half contains the remainder of the message. Because I have not been careless in 20 years. "I'm sure you haven't," I told him, "but none of that says you saw it whole." "I saw it whole," he said, and then caught himself like a man who realizes he has said the only thing that can't be edited. For a moment. "Long enough to read part of it." "Not long enough to—" He cut the sentence off. "Not long enough to remember it," I supplied, which is a little thin for a man who claims he doesn't misplace commas. "Mr. Goodwin, I'm not asking for your admiration for my memory. I'm asking for Mr. Wolfe's discretion and skill. This is the threshold. I'm deciding whether to cross it. That makes two of us." I set the half card down. "Let's talk about the thing you claim was taken. Is it this missing half? Or is the missing half only a message about something else?" He looked at me hard, and I got the idea he'd rather negotiate a bridge sale with a shark. "The card is not the thing. The card is a warning that the thing is exposed." "Now we're cooking. What's the thing?" "An agreement," he said. "A private one, written, signed. It concerns the 4 people I have invited for Thursday." I whistled softly, because I'd rather whistle than say ah. "Professor Kerner, Mrs. Lorne, Raphael Boone, Damon Hirst. You've got an academic, a social philanthropist, a finance climber, and a Chicago import. What kind of agreement corrals that zoo?" "One that should never enter a courtroom." He still wasn't sitting. I was starting to feel like he was pacing without moving. "So why the dinner? Why the red invitation? Why not just hire Wolfe straight and skip the theatrics?" "Because I must observe them," he said. "In one room, under pressure I control. They believe the dinner is for one purpose. It is for another." "And are they expecting Mr. Wolfe as entertainment or as a threat?" "Neither. They do not know he's invited." "Then why invite him at all?" His mouth tightened. "Because I require an arbiter. One who cannot be bought by any of them. One who can read motives while remaining outside them." I laughed once, short. "You're describing Wolfe the way a church describes a saint." "There are no saints," Grove said coldly. "There are only men who are predictable in rare ways. Mr. Wolfe is predictable in his refusal to be corrupted." That was praise, and it sounded like a man praising a safe's hinges. I let it pass. "Okay," I said. "You're setting a stage. Something got taken. You need Wolfe both to find it and to keep the actors from chewing the scenery. So tell me what you read on the card before it got halved." He exhaled through his nose. It began. Mr. Alden Grove is cordially invited. It was written to me in the same manner as the one you carry. He nodded at the half. It named a location. It named a time. It named a subject. Then it said, if you wish to keep your house, within your house intact, you will bring with you the document of... And that's where you got interrupted, I said. Yes. Interrupted how? The air changed behind me. I turned. Someone was in the doorway. Describe. A man. He sounded disgusted at the poverty of the detail. Average height, dark coat, hat low, gloves. Face? Not clearly. He moved quickly. He crossed the room and took the card from my hand, or attempted to. I grasped it. It tore. He took half and left. Didn't speak. Not a word. Didn't threaten you. He didn't need to. He was already in my study. That line made sense. If a man gets into your study, he doesn't have to wave a gun. He just has to wave the fact he got in. I let my eyes drift around. The study was handsome without being fussy. Books built into the walls, a few framed things that could have been art or trophies, nothing personal enough to tell you what he feared besides disorder. The desk was centered, the windows at his back. It was a room designed for control and privacy, the kind of room that screams if a stranger breathes in it. Security? I asked. It failed. Cameras? Blind. His jaw clenched. Temporarily. We discovered the interference afterward. Someone knew what he was doing. Meaning this isn't a random thief. This is a person who knew about your agreement, knew about the stationery, and wanted that missing half badly enough to waltz into your den. Yes. And you don't want the police? No, not unless I have to. Because the agreement would come up, and then your house inside your house becomes a house on fire. He nodded once. All right, I said. What's the agreement about? I don't need bolt by bolt, but I need the shape. He walked to the window and back, like a man trying on a truth to see if it fits. Finally, he said, 4 years ago we created a private consortium. We intended to acquire a controlling interest in a company whose work bears on national security. We used intermediaries, shell funds, private donations. Kerner supplied the intellectual property. Boone supplied capital. Mrs. Lorne supplied access to philanthropic channels that masked our transfers. Hearst supplied political insulation from Chicago. I supplied direction. The document formalized the percentage control and the conditions under which any partner could exit. And if that document gets loose, then all of us are ruined. Professionally, legally, possibly worse. He said it flatly, but his eyes were not flat. The missing half of the card, Mr. Goodwin, told me to bring it to a meeting I did not arrange. Either I comply and walk into a trap, or I refuse and await exposure. And instead, you decided to invite the 4 of them to dinner, pretend it's about honor, and bring Wolfe in as your chess master. Essentially. I leaned back. Then you're not just hiring Wolfe to play referee. You're hiring him to keep you alive in your own house. If you require a melodramatic phrase. I require accuracy. Where is the document now? In my safe. Who else knows that? No one. I nodded. That's what men always say right before somebody proves them wrong. Okay. I'll take this to Wolfe. He'll want specifics. Names of the company, dates, copies. He'll also want his fee discussed like adults. Grove's mouth twitched. He will be compensated. He will be compensated first. That finally made him sit. Not all the way. He lowered himself like a man conceding a point he intends to take back later. Mr. Goodwin, if Mr. Wolfe accepts, he must attend the dinner. He'll attend if it suits him. As of now, it suits him enough to send me. Keep your actors on the line for Thursday, keep your people from sniffing around the brownstone, and don't let anyone else into this study until I've spoken to Wolfe. You've been penetrated once. Don't make a habit of it. He stared at me, and for the first time there was something like real worry in the face, a shadow passing where arrogance had been. You think he will try again? I think he already has what he wants. The question is what he plans to do with it, and that makes him either very patient or very close. I stood. One more thing. Miss Vane, is she in danger? Grove said nothing for a beat too long. Then, no, she is distressed, but she is not the target. People like her make good targets because they don't know they are. If anything changes, you tell me before you tell your mirror. He didn't like that, but he didn't argue. Heller brought me down and out. The rain had stopped, leaving the street slick and reflecting light like a confession that hadn't yet decided to be public. I stepped into a cab and gave the driver my address. On the ride back, I let the picture settle. A rich man with a hidden consortium and a document that could hang 4 reputations by the neck. A stranger who walked into his study, cut his card in half, and walked out with part of a message that could force a move. 4 suspects invited to dinner who didn't know the referee was coming, and a symbol that meant a house within a house. Wolfe was going to love this the way a cat loves a canary, quietly and with plans. When I got back to the brownstone, Fritz met me in the hall. "Mr. Goodwin," he said quickly but politely, "there has been a telephone call. A man. He would not give his name. He said to tell you that you are late." I blinked at him. Late for what, Fritz? He shook his head, eyes worried. He did not say. Only that you are late, and that Mr. Wolfe will understand. That was when I felt the blood-red card in my pocket get a little heavier. I handed my hat to Fritz and went straight to the office without taking my coat off. A man who calls your house to say you're late isn't reminding you about dinner. He's reminding you about physics. Wolfe was in his chair, the way a glacier is in its valley. Quiet, permanent, and potentially disastrous if you start poking at it. He was rereading the blood-red card, holding it by 2 corners as if it were contagious. "You're late," he said. "Fritz already told me. If I knew for what, I'd feel worse." Wolfe's eyes slid to me, and I could see he was already working 3 moves past my confusion. A call was received 15 minutes ago. The voice was male, cultivated, not young. He declined to identify himself. He said, "Tell Goodwin he is late." When Fritz asked for clarification, he repeated it. He further said, "Wolfe will understand." "Did you?" "Not yet," Wolfe said, which in his mouth is an admission of curiosity so large it ought to have its own zip code. "But I'm close." I peeled off my coat and threw it on a chair. "Then let me add to your breakfast. I saw Grove." "I inferred you might." "Facts." I sat on the edge of my desk instead of in my chair. If Wolfe is in a mood like this, it's better to keep your center of gravity ready for quick retreat. Grove's study was penetrated yesterday at noon. A man he couldn't identify walked in, snatched a blood-red invitation card from his hand, tore it cleanly in half, took 1 half, and left. The half Grove has begins. Mr. Alden Grove is cordially invited, and includes a threat about keeping the house within your house intact. It ordered him to bring to a meeting a document connected to a consortium he formed 4 years ago with Kerner, Lorne, Boone, and Hurst. The missing half names the meeting place and likely the full demand. Grove says the document is in his safe and he doesn't want police. He wants you as arbiter at a dinner on Thursday and as an investigator to find who took the half card and why. Wolfe listened without a muscle. When I finished, he rested the card on his belly again like a portly judge about to deliver a verdict. "The obvious," he said. "Which part?" "That the telephone caller is also the man who entered Grove's study. His remark that you are late is not about time. It is about position." I frowned. "Meaning?" "Meaning you are already involved more deeply than you realized. You have been lured into a schedule not your own. There is, I think, an appointment that has already been set for you, perhaps by the missing half of the card. You are not invited. You were instructed. You failed to appear, therefore you are late. I stared at him. That's a neat idea, but it assumes the guy expects me to obey instructions I haven't seen. Wolfe's lips tightened. It assumes only that he expects you to react. The message was directed to Grove, yet he said I would understand. Why? Because he expects me to deduce that the confrontation is not limited to Grove's house. He has extended it to mine. He is trespassing on my territory. Archie, you may be the root. The word trespassing in Wolfe's voice is like a match in a gas pantry. I sat down properly. Okay, I said. Suppose there was a meeting I missed. Who would set it, and where, and why not say so plainly? Because he is not inviting you for tea. He is maneuvering you toward a blunder. Wolfe tapped the red card with a finger. The symbolism is crude but effective. The color, the emblem about a house within a house, the language of honor. He intends to provoke fear of exposure and to induce mistakes. Maybe, I said. Or maybe he's just a show-off. But if I'm late for something, what do we do about it? Send me back out to sit on park benches waiting for a man in a dark coat to tap my shoulder? No. Wolfe's eyes were sharp now. We do not chase phantoms on their terms. We revise the field. First, we must see the remainder of that card. The missing half is with the phantom. No, Wolfe said. A copy exists. I blinked. You're sure? Strongly. The card was produced on Grove stationery. It was cut cleanly. If the man intended only to communicate, he might have torn it in jagged anger. But he cut it, which indicates intention to preserve one half legibly. He required the other half for leverage, perhaps to show later. A man of such method does not rely on a single artifact. He will have written or dictated another version. Or he will have a draft, or he will have a confederate who knows the text. You're thinking Kerner, Lorne, Boone, or Hearst wrote it. I'm thinking the writer is either among them or close enough to their circle to understand their private structure and Grove's emblem. The card is not an act of random blackmail. It is a message from inside the house, within the house. I let that sit because it landed where it was meant to. If he's inside the consortium, why threaten Grove at all? He could just leak the document. Unless he does not possess the document, Wolfe said. Unless he wants something more than exposure. He may want control of the consortium, or revenge, or a specific decision made at the dinner. The threat is a tool to shape behavior. And the dinner is the arena. Precisely. What about Miss Vane? I asked. Grove says she's not the target. Wolfe's mouth turned down. That is reassuring only if Grove is correct. She is messenger and witness. Those are roles that tend to shorten life expectancy. Then maybe we bring her here. Wolfe's eyes lifted at me, heavy. We do not shelter pieces before we know the game. However, she will be useful. You will telephone her now and ask her to come here at 9. I looked at the clock. It was just past 7. She might not be able to slip out. She will if she's frightened, Wolfe said. Fear is a competent locksmith. I reached for the phone. As I dialed, Wolfe added, While you speak with her, I will telephone Saul Panzer. A discreet inquiry is needed at Grove's residence. We must know who is coming and going there tonight. I got Celia Vane on the 3rd ring, which meant she had been hovering near the instrument like a swimmer with one foot on the dock. Miss Vane, I said. Archie Goodwin. Are you all right? A pause that had breathing in it. Yes, for now. All right, changes. Mr. Wolfe wants to see you. Tonight, 9 o'clock. Can you come? Another pause. Shorter. Yes. Good. No cab from the house. Walk a block first, then take one. If anyone asks, you're visiting a sick aunt in Queens. If anyone follows, don't lead them here. Circle and call me from a payphone. I understand, she said. There was a steadiness now that wasn't there earlier. Either she was brave, or she knew she didn't have the luxury of not being. See you at 9. I hung up. Wolfe was already speaking into his own phone, his voice smooth as an undertaker's tie. When he finished, he looked at me. "Archie, you will not leave the house again tonight unless I instruct it. A man who says you are late might attempt to make you earlier next time." Meaning he might show up here. Yes? The brownstone, which had been a sanctuary 2 hours ago, felt suddenly like a chessboard with squares I hadn't noticed. I nodded once. "So we wait. We prepare." Wolfe's eyes went to the red card on the desk. "We have been invited, Archie. Not to dinner, to a contest of intellect. I accept. And I'm the guy who gets to carry the trophies," I muttered. Wolfe ignored me, but he was smiling a little, which is what he does when the world finally has the decency to become interesting on his terms. Waiting in Wolfe's brownstone is never passive. The house may look like a comfortable old anchorage from the street, but inside it runs on a set of rituals that make you feel the way a soldier feels when his general says, "Relax." You don't relax. You check your weapons and you listen for footsteps that are supposed to be impossible. By 8:30, Fritz had dinner ready, but Wolfe wouldn't touch it. That alone told me the evening had teeth. Wolfe takes food seriously the way other men take religion seriously, and he doesn't postpone roast duck unless he's already chewing on something else. I ate in the kitchen out of Fritz's line of worry. He hates watching me eat like a bachelor at a buffet, and kept one ear tuned toward the front hall. At 8:45, the bell rang. Not a timid press, not a double ring from a regressive who thinks speed equals importance. Just a firm, single push the way a professional announces herself. I went to the door, because Wolfe didn't need to spend the calories. Celia Vane was on the stoop in a dark coat, her hair under a neat hat that didn't look like it had ever been mussed by weather or indecision. Her face was paler than earlier, but her eyes were steady, and that meant nerves were doing their job without attempting a coup. "Come in," I said. "You're on time. That's already more than some people manage." She stepped inside, glanced over her shoulder as if memorizing the street behind her, then handed me her coat. No one followed. "You weren't supposed to check that yourself," I told her, "but I'm relieved your stubbornness is the safe kind." She didn't smile. She didn't look scared, exactly. She looked like a woman who had spent 48 hours trying to think of a door that wasn't there. Back in the office, Wolfe was in his chair, naturally, and when she entered, he raised his hand just enough to acknowledge her existence. His welcome is always economical. "Miss Vane," he said. "Sit, please." She took the red leather chair again. Either she hadn't learned or she had, and I suspected the latter. Wolfe didn't waste time with preface. "You delivered my message to Mr. Grove?" "Yes. He agreed to your condition. He said Mr. Goodwin came. He said you were considering the case." "We are." Wolfe's voice was flat, but his eyes had a bright edge. "During your return to him or since, have you been questioned about your visit here?" "No." "Observed?" She hesitated a beat. "I don't think so." "Do not guess," Wolfe said quietly. "Think." She made herself run it back like a film she didn't want to watch. "When I left your house, I walked to Lexington. I took a cab 2 blocks south of the house. I watched the mirror. No car stayed behind us long. At Grove's, the guard was at his post. Heller was in the hall. No one spoke to me besides Mr. Grove, and he spoke only about his instructions. Afterward, I went to my room. I did not leave again. No one entered. If I was observed, it was not clumsy." "Good." Wolfe looked at me. "Archie, note that she is competent." "I already did," I said. Then I noted she was also in danger for being competent. Miss Vane's eyes cut to me in a way, as if I had said something indecent. Wolfe returned to her. "Now, madam, I will ask specific questions. Answer what you can. If you cannot, say so. If you refuse, say so, but do not equivocate." She nodded once. "Describe Mr. Grove's household security." 2 men during the day, 3 at night. There are cameras on the perimeter and in the first-floor hallways. There are no cameras on the second floor except at the stair landing. Mr. Grove dislikes being watched. Who manages the system? Mr. Heller supervises. The physical system is installed and maintained by a private firm, Talon Security. Do you know who has codes or access besides Heller? Mr. Grove. Heller, the night supervisor, the Talon technician when he comes. I may access the exterior feed for deliveries. Wolfe nodded slightly. Yesterday at noon, the cameras were blind. How long? Approximately 12 minutes. You know this? I was told by Heller after the fact. He was furious. He checked the logs. Did he say whether the failure was technical or interference? Interference. He said the system was jammed locally, meaning a device near the house. Yes. All right. Wolfe adjusted his cuffs as if that were a logical punctuation mark. Yesterday at noon, where were you? In the small office adjacent to Mr. Grove's study. I was scheduling calls. The door between the rooms was closed. Did you hear anything? No, not until I heard the study door open and close quickly. Then Mr. Grove called Heller. So you did not witness the intruder? No. Who besides you was on the second floor at that time? She had to think. Heller came up once at 11 to speak with Mr. Grove. He left. The housekeeper, Maritza, went up with a tray at 11:30. She left by the service stairs. The security guard patrolled the landing at noon, as scheduled. Is there anyone who might have deviated from schedule without notice? Possibly a maintenance man. We had a plumber in the basement, but he did not have access upstairs, and there were no guests. No invited guests, Wolfe corrected. Yes. Now the invitation card you brought here. You said the emblem signifies the house within the house. Did Mr. Grove ever use that phrase in other contexts? Her mouth tightened. Yes. He uses it about loyalty, about a circle of people who are inside his confidence. He says it often when he is displeased. Remember the house within the house, he will say, as if it is a warning and a promise at the same time. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. To whom has he said this recently? She blinked. I don't know. Not to me. I try not to be in the room when he is displeased. Try, I muttered. She shot me a look, but Wolfe didn't let the moment expand. Do you know the 4 dinner guests? Not well. I've met Mrs. Lorne twice at charity events. She was gracious. I've seen Mr. Boone in the house once last year. He is energetic. Professor Kerner I have never met. Mr. Hurst arrives tomorrow. I've only heard his name. What do you know of their relations with one another? Only what I have inferred. There is tension. When they speak on the phone with Mr. Grove, their voices change if another name is mentioned. Boone is often impatient. Mrs. Lorne is careful. Professor Kerner has called twice in the last week, and Mr. Grove took both calls alone. Wolfe let that hang, then asked, Have you seen any of them in the last 48 hours, besides by telephone or message? No. Has Mr. Grove received any unusual deliveries or correspondence? Yes. She sat straighter. 2 days ago, he received a thin parcel by courier. No label except the emblem. He opened it in his study. After that, he told Heller to increase night patrol. He did not tell me why. Did you see the parcel? Only the outer wrapping. It was stiff, like a document folder. Wolfe's eyes drifted to the blood-red card on his desk. Archie. Yeah, I said. The missing half's twin, maybe. Or something worse. Miss Vane looked from Wolfe to me. Something worse? Wolfe spoke gently, which from him is a signal flare. Madam, you're in a position that makes you useful but also vulnerable. I will not conceal that. If you are alarmed, it is appropriate to be. She didn't flinch. I'm already alarmed. I came because I want to be alive when this is over. Wolfe nodded. A reasonable desire. Therefore, tonight you will not return to Mr. Grove's house. Her eyes widened for the first time. I can't. You will. Wolfe's tone was quiet iron. "You will telephone Mr. Heller and say that Mr. Grove has instructed you to remain at your sister's apartment owing to a family indisposition. If Heller objects, you will tell him to confirm with Mr. Grove. If Mr. Grove objects, you will tell him that I object more. I will speak with him if required." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. The relief was there, but so was the fear of what refusing authority costs. Wolfe had just taken that cost onto his tab. "Fritz will prepare the south bedroom for you," Wolfe said. "Archie will escort you to make the call. Then you will rest. Tomorrow we proceed." I stood. "Come on, Miss Vane. Let's go tell the house within the house you're spending the night in a more stubborn house." As we left the office, I felt the air in the brownstone settle into a new shape. We'd just added a piece to the board, and somewhere out there, a man who said I was late had to be deciding whether he wanted to knock next or wait until Thursday's dinner to do his knocking in public. The call to Heller went smoother than I'd expected, which meant either Wolfe's reputation had traveled downtown faster than I had, or Heller was the sort of man who doesn't argue with a locked door when he can argue with the key later. Miss Vane stood in the front room with the receiver in her gloved hand, her voice steady enough to pass for routine, while I lounged in the doorway and listened for trouble in the gaps between her words. "Mr. Heller, this is Celia. Mr. Grove instructed me to remain at my sister's tonight. Family indisposition." A pause. "Yes, I know it is short notice." He was explicit. Another pause. Longer. Her eyes met mine, and there was a question there. "If you wish to confirm, he said you may call him." She waited, then gave a quiet, "Thank you," and hung up. "He didn't like it," she said softly. "Mr. Heller doesn't like gravity," I told her, "but he lives with it." Fritz whisked her upstairs as if he had been waiting years for an excuse to protect someone from rich men and their house emblems. When I went back to the office, Wolfe was still in his chair, fingers steepled, eyes half-lidded in that way that means he's already cut the cake and is deciding who gets which slice. "She's settled," I said. "Good." Wolfe lifted his gaze. Saul Panzer was productive. That was quick. Saul is frequently quick. Wolfe's mouth barely moved. At 8 o'clock, an unfamiliar man entered Grove's residence by the service entrance. He was admitted by security without challenge. He remained 20 minutes and left by the same route. Saul observed him from across the street. The man was middle-aged, well-dressed, carried a thin parcel under his arm. He did not appear to be staff. He did not appear to be a courier. He appeared to be someone who belonged. I sat down. So either Heller waved him in or security did because they recognized him. Precisely. Did Saul get a face? A partial one. He will attempt identification tomorrow morning. For now, he reports the man had a slight limp and wore light gloves despite the mild weather. Limp and gloves. I whistled quietly. Not much to run on, but it's something. It is more than something. Wolfe reached for the red card, turned it so the emblem faced him. It suggests the intruder has access to Grove's inner circle and that Grove's security men are not in charge of their own door. I rubbed my forehead. So we've got a consortium with a leak, a blackmail card that got split like a ledger, and now a nighttime visitor who strolls in like he owns the service stairs. What's your next move? Wolfe regarded me as if I'd asked him why the moon bothered to show up. First, we convert names into knowledge. You will see Professor Lionel Kerner in the morning. I will see Mrs. Tabitha Lorne here at 11. You will then make yourself available to meet Boone in the afternoon if he can be induced. Hurst we will postpone until he arrives. Induced how? These people aren't going to line up just because you put their names on a schedule. They will if their honor has been invoked. Wolfe picked up the blood-red card again. This dinner is already an implied accusation. They will be uneasy. Unease makes men curious, and curiosity makes them talk. Also, I will telephone Mrs. Lorne at 9. She is accustomed to me. She will come. Boone is impulsive and vain. He will come if he thinks he can dominate the conversation. Kerner will come if he believes there is an intellectual dispute to settle. Hurst from Chicago will come because he is already coming. You're building a guest list for a party you aren't hosting, I said. I am hosting it. Here. Wolfe's tone was calm, but there was a lock in it. Grove may think Thursday belongs to him. It does not. The axis has shifted. He trespassed. Therefore, the contest is mine to define. That was Wolfe talking like a man who had just found a foreign boot print in his orchid. Room. How do we get them here before Thursday without tipping our hand? Wolfe gave me a look of mild pity. We do not conceal our hand. We control the deck. I will request their presence in the usual manner, politely, reasonably, and with the implication that refusal would be foolish. They will not know what we know, and that is advantage enough. He picked up the phone and began dialing with those deliberate, fat-fingered motions that make even a rotary dial look intimidated. Sit, he said to me, as if I might otherwise interfere with gravity. I sat and watched him do what he does best, talk a world into arranging itself. He spoke to Mrs. Lorne first. His voice was warm by Wolfe standards, which is to say it dipped 2 degrees above freezing. Madame, this is Nero Wolfe. Yes. I hope I do not intrude. I require your counsel regarding a matter that will involve your interests. You will come to my office at 11 tomorrow. Thank you. He set the receiver down, dialed another number. Professor Kerner, Mr. Wolfe speaking. It is not a mistake. I propose a conversation of mutual benefit. My assistant will call at 10 to confirm your address. Be available at 9:30. Yes, it concerns Mr. Alden Grove. Then your curiosity is justified. Good day. Click. Another number. Mr. Boone. You are acquainted with me by reputation, if not by pleasure. I am not solicitous of your time, I am solicitous of your intelligence. Mr. Grove is facing a problem that may embarrass you. I will prevent that embarrassment if you cooperate. Come here at 3 tomorrow. Or do not, and see what embarrassment chooses to do alone. Good evening. He hung up and looked at me. That ought to stir the pot, I said. It will remove the lid, he corrected. Archie, you will telephone Kerner's office in the morning and arrange to meet him. Take Ori Cather with you. Because you expect trouble? Because I expect possibility. We are nearing a pressure point. The man who entered Grove's residence tonight may wish to enter mine next. We will not be unprepared. I nodded. And what about Miss Vane? You're keeping her here as a piece and as insurance? As a witness. Wolfe's eyes went briefly toward the ceiling, toward the south bedroom. And perhaps as a lure. If our adversary is watching Grove's household, her absence will be noticed. He may attempt to locate her. If he does, he will reveal methods. Meaning he might come sniffing around this brownstone? Meaning he might, Wolfe said. Therefore, you will sleep lightly. I stood. I always do in cases like this. My conscience keeps poking me to make sure I'm still in business. Wolfe waved a hand, dismissing both my humor and my humanity. Go to bed, Archie. Tomorrow will require your more vigorous incompetence. As I went upstairs, the brownstone felt different. A guest room occupied, an axis shifted. 4 suspects about to be tugged by invisible strings toward our door. And outside, in the city that never wastes a good secret, somebody had a missing half of a blood-red card and a reason to make people late. I didn't like being late. It's bad for the ego and worse for the liver. I checked the front lock twice before I turned in. Not because I expected a midnight visit, but because I expected the night to think about it. Thursday night is the kind that makes New York look like it has secrets under every stoop. By 6, I had already been to Professor Kerner's apartment, listened to him defend an ego the size of a lecture hall, and watched Ori Cather make polite notes while his eyes did the kind of counting you can't learn in school. By noon, Mrs. Tabitha Lorne had sat in Wolfe's red leather chair and said 3 things that were true, 2 things that were useful, and 1 thing that was probably a lie she couldn't afford to polish. By 3, Raphael Boone had blown into the office like a trumpet in a library, tried to own the room by being louder than it was, and left looking quiet in places he didn't like quiet. Damon Hirst arrived from Chicago late afternoon and came here because Wolfe had told him, in a voice like a closed door, that a man who ignores a warning isn't brave, just lazy. The exciting part for me was that each of them, in his or her own costume, had stepped on the same invisible rake. They all flinched when Wolfe mentioned the phrase, "the house within the house." Not because it was poetic, but because it was private. Kerner's eyes had narrowed as if the words were a theorem someone had stolen. Boone had barked a laugh too fast. Hirst had looked annoyed in the way politicians do when they're reminded the public owns mirrors. And Mrs. Lorne had gone still, the way a woman goes still when her pearls feel tighter than usual. That by itself didn't name a culprit. It only tagged the pasture where the wolf was grazing. The second tag came from Saul Panza. He identified the limping nighttime visitor at Grove's house as Damon Hirst. The limp was old, an injury from a college football game or a bar fight depending on which legend he was selling this decade, and the gloves were a habit of a man who doesn't like leaving himself on surfaces. Hirst hadn't mentioned going to Grove's at 8. Grove hadn't mentioned seeing Hirst at all. That meant Hirst had either gone there secretly or been seen secretly, which is the same thing in a case like this. Wolfe listened to Saul's report without a twitch, and then it was as if a door inside his head clicked shut in satisfaction. He told me to get fresh cuffs, told Fritz to prepare a proper dinner for after midnight, and called Grove to say we would attend the gathering at his house at 8 on the condition that all 4 guests appear and that Miss Vane be viewed as under Wolfe's protection. Grove didn't like conditions any more than he liked being penetrated, but he said yes because he could do arithmetic even under threat. We arrived at Grove's townhouse at 10 minutes to 8. Wolfe hates arriving early, but hates being arranged even more, so 10 minutes early was his way of putting a thumb on the scale. Miss Vane came with us in the cab, quiet and pale and determined to be a person rather than a pawn. Ori Cather rode in another cab behind us, because Wolfe had decided there would be no surprises without witnesses. Inside, the house wore ceremony the way it wore money. Hella received us with a face that was polite enough to keep its job, but sour enough to keep its dignity. He showed us to the dining room where the table was laid like a treaty. Kerner, Boone, Mrs. Lorne, and Hirst were already there. They all had the same expression at first sight of Wolfe, some mixture of indignation and relief. If you invite people to dinner and they find a detective sitting down first, it pinches their pride and soothes their fear in equal measure. They don't know which feeling to trust. Grove did the introductions as if he were reciting names at a memorial. "Mr. Wolfe," he said with a stiff nod. "I appreciate your presence." Wolfe returned the nod. "I appreciate your duck, Mr. Grove. Let us eat while we can still pretend this is a dinner." That set the tone. Grove blinked, Boone smirked, Kerner sniffed, Hirst showed teeth without a smile, and Mrs. Lorne watched Wolfe the way a woman watches a safe in a burning building. We ate for 15 minutes. Only 15. Enough to establish that we were civilized people doing an uncivilized thing. Then Wolfe set his napkin down, dabbed his lips, and leaned back. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said in his calm courtroom baritone, "I have consented to attend this dinner, not as a guest, but as an arbitrator. Mr. Grove has invoked honor. When honor is invoked among clever people, it means someone is lying. Therefore, we will forego dessert and speak the truth." Boone made a soft sound. "This is ridiculous." "Perhaps," Wolfe agreed. "Nevertheless, it will proceed. Mr. Grove, tell them why we are here." Grove's jaw worked once. He looked at the faces around his table, and in that moment he wasn't inevitable at all. He was a man in a room full of people who could ruin him. "The card was left on my desk," he said. "It was torn in half and part taken from me. It demanded that I bring a certain document to a meeting. It threatened exposure if I did not. 4 reactions, neatly different. Kerner's chin jerked up. What sort of exposure? Mrs. Lorne's eyes went to her wine glass as if it were suddenly interesting. Boone said, "You called us for blackmail." Hurst said nothing. He simply watched Grove, and his hand was under the table long enough to make me suspect he was holding something besides linen. Wolfe ignored everybody else and said to Grove, "The phrase about your emblem, repeat it." Grove swallowed. It said, "If I wish to keep the house within the house, intact." That phrase floated in the air and punctured something private in each of them. It was like saying a code word in a room full of people who pretend they don't speak the language. Wolfe nodded. "Thank you. The missing half, of course, named the meeting and required you to bring the consortium document." Mrs. Lorne's head snapped up. "You told him?" Grove stiffened. "I told Mr. Wolfe enough." "You told him too much," she said sharply. Wolfe's eyes drifted to her. "Madam, when a ship is taking water, one does not quarrel with the man bailing because he knows the shape of your hull." Boone leaned forward. "So we're not pretending anymore." "Fine. Someone is squeezing Grove. Meaning one of us." "Which one?" "Not necessarily one of you," Hurst said smoothly. "There are other people who know." Kerner's laugh was dry. "Who, Damon? Your friends in Chicago? My graduate assistants? Tabitha's board committees? Boone's gambling partners?" Hurst's eyes chilled. "Careful, Professor." Wolfe let the tension gather like a noose he was tying at leisure. Then he spoke. "We will remove confusion in the simplest manner. The man who entered this house 2 nights ago at 8, carrying a thin folder, was Mr. Hurst." Every head turned to Hurst. Boone looked delighted. Kerner looked vindicated. Mrs. Lorne looked sick. Grove looked furious and frightened at the same time. Hurst didn't flinch. "Who says I was here?" "I do," Wolfe said, "and my associate Saul Panzer, whose eyesight is excellent. You did not announce your visit to Mr. Grove, and Mr. Grove did not announce it to the rest of you. Therefore, your visit was private. Explain." Hurst put his napkin down slowly, as if he were setting a gun on a table. "I came because Alden asked me to. We needed to talk before the others arrived." Grove snapped. "I did no such thing." Hurst's smile flickered. "Alden?" "No." Grove rose halfway from his chair. "You did not come at my request. You came without my knowledge. Heller admitted you because he thought you belonged. You use that. Why?" Hurst looked at Heller for a split second, too fast for people who weren't watching for it. Heller stared at the floor. That told me Heller wasn't just a butler. He was a corridor. Wolfe said quietly, "Because Mr. Hurst is the author of the blood-red card." There. That was the part where people usually gasp. These people didn't gasp. They hardened. The consortium had been a private engine for a long time. It had acquired a habit of not showing emotion on command. Hurst finally spoke to Wolfe directly. "That's a claim. You have proof?" "An abundance." Wolfe folded his hands. "Let us proceed by the geometry of motive. Mr. Hurst, you were recruited into the consortium late to provide political insulation. Your percentage was defined in the document and, I infer, smaller than you wished. On Tuesday, you entered Mr. Grove's study, seized the invitation card, and retained the half containing your demand and meeting location. You used the emblem and phrase to demonstrate insider authority. You jammed the cameras with a portable device because you have access to such instruments through a Chicago security contractor aligned with your political work. You then called my house to say my assistant was late because you wished to imply that you control the schedule of everyone involved, including me." Hurst's eyes narrowed. "That's theater." "No," Wolfe said. "Theater requires an audience that is deceived. This is merely sequence. Your demand, withheld from us, was not to bring the document for its own sake. It was to bring it so you could destroy it, or amend it, or trade it for control. Your visit here 2 nights ago was to ascertain whether the document was accessible. You intended to retrieve it before Thursday, but found Mr. Grove had moved it. Therefore, you shifted to coercion through the dinner. Boone barked, "Hell, Damon, you tried a coup?" Hurst stayed calm. "You're all guessing, and you're forgetting a simple fact. If I wanted to expose this, I would just expose it. I wouldn't need a red card." Wolfe inclined his head. "Correct. Therefore, you did not want exposure. You wanted leverage. Specifically, you wanted Mr. Grove to sign a revised exit clause granting you effective control if any partner defaulted or withdrew. You expected fear to make him comply." Mrs. Lorne whispered. "Why?" Hurst looked at her, and there was a flash now, real feeling and ugly. "Because you've all been playing with matches in a dry forest. Kerner hides in academia and thinks that makes him pure. Boone throws money at anything that moves. Alden thinks because he says honor he can erase crimes. And you?" His eyes cut to Mrs. Lorne. "You dress it all in charity and call it moral. The company we acquired isn't a toy. It's power. If it collapses under your vanity, I take the fall too. I decided I'd rather steer the ship than drown in it." Kerner said coldly. "So you blackmailed us." "I corrected you," Hurst shot back. "Blackmail is for cowards. This was governance." Wolfe looked bored, which was his way of showing disgust. "Governance does not begin with burglary." Hurst's voice sharpened. "You think I'm the only one who can enter Alden's study? Ask your girl, ask Celia, how often Heller goes there after hours with a key." All heads turned to Miss Vane, who had been standing quietly by the sideboard, hands folded, looking like a person who had been asked to witness her own life. She lifted her chin. "Mr. Heller entered the study at 11 yesterday." "Yes." "Mr. Grove was on a call. Mr. Heller carried a tray. He left with nothing." Heller flushed. Miss Vane..." Wolfe raised a hand. "Silence, Mr. Heller. You are not accused of authorship, only of assistance. You admitted Mr. Hurst on Tuesday night. You did so without consulting Mr. Grove." "Why?" Heller's throat moved. He looked at Grove, and for the first time he seemed to understand the difference between loyalty and fear. "Because Mr. Hurst told me," Heller said hoarsely, "that he had authority from the house within the house." Boone snorted. "You let him in because he used the club password." Heller's face went gray. "Mr. Grove, I thought..." "You thought wrong," Grove said flatly. Wolfe nodded. "There is your mechanism." Mr. Hurst leveraged the phrase as an internal credential. The rest was timing. Hurst spread his hands slightly. "Even if that were true, you still don't have the missing half of the card. You don't have the text. You don't have the demand. You don't have evidence I wrote it." Wolfe looked at me. That was my cue. I reached into my inside pocket and took out a small envelope. Blood red. I hadn't had it yesterday. I had it now for one reason. Ori Cather had fetched it from Kerner's wastebasket this morning while the professor was busy telling me nobody in his circle was capable of melodrama. It was a carbon draft, thin, faint, but unmistakable. I slid it onto the table. Hurst's eyes fixed on it a fraction too long. Kerner stared, baffled. Boone whistled. Mrs. Lorne went pale in a way that wasn't cosmetic. Wolfe said, "Professor Kerner, you are careless with your trash. One of your graduate assistants retrieved this from your desk for disposal yesterday. You did not see it because you were speaking on the telephone with Mr. Grove about a misunderstanding you wished resolved. But the carbon sat there long enough for Ori Cather to rescue it." Kerner's mouth opened. "That's absurd. I didn't..." "No," Wolfe said. "You did not write it. Your assistant did not write it. The carbon existed because Mr. Hurst met you in your office Monday under the pretense of discussing your intellectual property. He used your desk, your stationery stock, and your ink ribbon. He left his draft behind when he departed quickly after receiving a call. You found the draft later and discarded it because you recognized the emblem and feared involvement. That was your error. Kerner went still, then angry. Damon. Hurst's expression had altered now, not into fear, into calculation. He was already choosing his next lie. Wolfe didn't give him time. The draft states your demand clearly. He tapped the paper with a finger and summarized it in his dry, exact way. The meeting location, the order to bring the consortium document, the ultimatum to sign an amended control clause by Thursday evening, and the threat to expose the consortium to federal authorities and the press if Grove refused. Hurst's face hardened. It was necessary. Necessary for your ambition, Wolfe said, not for your safety. Your real motive is simpler than your rhetoric. You intend to seize the company fully, then barter its influence in Chicago and Washington. You are not protecting the consortium, you are appropriating it. Boone said softly now, "You would have buried us." Hearst shrugged, and for a moment the politician dropped away, showing a man who thought ends were a kind of religion. Buried, saved, words, outcomes are what matter. Wolfe turned to Grove. You will telephone Inspector Kramer. You will also prepare the consortium document for transfer to council and, if you wish to avoid prison, for voluntary disclosure. I cannot prevent consequences. I can only prevent stupidity. Grove stared at the red draft on the table as if it were a piece of his own skin. Then he nodded once, and I saw the inevitable man accept the fact that inevitability sometimes means submitting to a timetable you didn't like. Hearst rose. I'm not staying for Kramer. You are not leaving, Wolfe said mildly. That's when Ori Cather, who had been leaning against the wall by the door, stepped forward. Not fast, not dramatic. Just enough that Hearst noticed there was a man in his way who didn't look negotiable. Hearst sat back down. Kramer arrived with 2 detectives and enough righteous irritation to fog the windows. Wolfe gave him the draft, gave him Panzer's identification, gave him the neat bundle of sequence he likes to hand the law the way a chef hands a diner a finished plate. Hearst objected, then realized objections were now a matter for lawyers, and shut up with a face like a closed suitcase. When the house finally exhaled and the police took Hearst away, Grove slumped in a chair as if someone had unplugged an engine. Mrs. Lorne looked broken and furious. Boone looked hungry for revenge. Kerner looked like a man who had just learned his brilliance doesn't keep burglars out. Miss Vane stood very straight. Wolfe stood, only to adjust his coat, not because he meant to move, and addressed the room in a voice almost kind. You were all intoxicated by secrecy, he said. You believed your interior loyalties made you immune to exterior law. You were mistaken. A house within a house is still a house, and houses burn from the inside more often than from lightning. No one answered. They didn't need to. The words would sit with them longer than any verdict. Wolfe turned toward the door. Archie. I followed him out, Miss Vane behind us. In the hallway, Heller looked like he wanted to apologize to every wall at once. Wolfe ignored him. He's always hardest on servants who let power pretend it is loyalty. Outside, the air was cold and clean. The cab ride back was quiet. Wolfe hates discussing a case before dinner because a hungry mind gets impatient, and impatience makes you sloppy. I didn't mind. My stomach was already thinking about Fritz's midnight tray. Back at the brownstone, Fritz had held the duck warm and his judgment warmer. We ate. Wolfe ate with the solemn joy of a man restoring order to a universe that had tried to misbehave. Afterward, with coffee in his hand like a final gavel, Wolfe said, Ambition is an appetite, Archie. It becomes criminal only when men pretend it is virtue. I leaned back, stretching my legs, feeling the brownstone settle into its old comfortable silence. Yeah, I said, but virtue's got a pretty big appetite too if you dress it up right. Wolfe looked at me over the rim of his cup. Do not be cynical. It is lazy. Be accurate. Accurate is what got us paid. I said. Cynical is what keeps me from sending blood-red invitations to my friends. From upstairs, I heard a door close softly, Miss Vane turning in, safe for the first time in days. The house within the house had tried to swallow her. Wolfe had spat it out. Wolfe sipped his coffee. The sanctity of this house, he said almost to himself, is not a superstition. It is a discipline. Those who trespass on it learn that discipline by the shortest available route. I grinned, preferably with cuffs on. He snorted, which from Wolfe is a laugh if you've known him long enough. The brownstone returned to silence. Dinner had been served. Justice, legal and moral, had been portioned out like a final course. And I, for once, wasn't late for anything except maybe sleep.